Hey there. Well, welcome back to Adventure in Art. My name is Ben Staley. This episode is going to be a little different. It's a question and answer, a AAA Q&A, if you will. I have been, for the last couple years, intermittently, every few months, I will do kind of a Q&A on Instagram or on social media. And I started doing this because people were kind of hitting me up in the DMs and asking me questions about portraits or filmmaking or photography or whatever. And, I kind of like it. The thing I like the most about it is people ask questions about things that, well, maybe I've got the answers or maybe I know about it, but I hadn't really thought about it and I hadn't really unpacked my own process. So for me, it was a great way to try and articulate my own internal experience, my own process. And, I've actually thought a little more deeply about what I'm actually doing sometimes. I think sometimes as artists, we get so used to doing certain things or we have certain skills and you kind of go on autopilot and you go on muscle memory and the skills are just kind of running. You're thinking about other things. It's kind of nice to slow down sometimes and unpack what you're actually doing, how you're actually arriving at a certain result. So it's been actually, selfishly, it's been a really beneficial process for me. So I'm bringing it here to the channel for the first time. I, requested people ask questions on Instagram, and I put up a little question story post and got, I don't know, a dozen or so decent questions, and we're going to tackle them. Embarrassingly, I did this yesterday, and I filmed the whole darn thing. And when I got done, I realized that somewhere in the middle, the camera had stopped recording for some very strange, mysterious reason. So I'm doing this for the second time. First time for you guys. Felt like a total freaking moron. I was so defeated, I just put the camera away and said, we're going to do this again tomorrow. So here we go. Let me get my eyes on here. And let's go to, we'll start at the bottom here. Here we go. This comes from CC Chapman, who honestly has been, CC, Mr. Chapman, sir, thank you for all the support on YouTube, on Instagram. Really appreciate it. So first question from CC, what is your first photography memory? Whew. I grew up really remote in rural Alaska, no electricity, no running water, no TV, no electronics of any kind. We chop wood for heat and that kind of thing, way off the grid. Is in the late 70s, early 80s. I'm pretty old. So the earliest memory that I have, my mom had this little, I think it's like the what they call now, or they call the 110 format. She had this little Kodak Instamatic camera, and it was like rectangular and kind of flat, like a little bigger than like an ice cream bar, or maybe like two packs of cigarettes put together. And it was just this little thing, and it had a flash, and it was pretty cool. And it was always laying around, and she would get film for it, and whenever we went to town, maybe get it developed. I always thought it was so cool. Man, I wish I still had that camera. I wonder what happened to it. It's a long time ago. That was that's the earliest memory I have having anything to do with photography, was that camera just kind of always kicking around somewhere. The next question, also from Chapman, CC Chapman. Thanks, buddy. Double dipping here. What keeps you moving forward during dark times that all creatives go through? And we do. Everybody goes through dark times. Being an artist, you can have real highs and lows. I think about this kind of holistically. I call it the EKG of life, right? Like 1 minute you're flying high, everything's great. You got work coming in out the yazoo, and in the back of your head that it's going to dry up eventually, and you're going to go through some low points. You're going to go through some dry spells. The clients aren't going to be calling. You're going to be struggling a little bit, and that just happens with life, right? It's the up and down. So what I try and do is I just try and keep that high point perspective, knowing that okay, when things are low, which I'm not going to lie, it's been challenging the last 5-6 months being an artist, being a professional filmmaker like I am. There hasn't been a lot of work. I've worked 3 weeks in the last 5 months. So for me, that's not very much. And so it's been like, tighten up the belt, get creative, figure out what we can do, realize this is going to end. So what do we got to do to get through this? And that's what I do to remind myself during the dark times, during the stressful times, during the creative, challenging parts of like, it's going to end. Eventually, it's going to get better. You're having a hard day, you're having a hard shoot, the shoot's going to end. And, in a number of hours or a number of days, you're going to look back and you're going to have a different perspective on the whole thing. And the main thing that's going to be in your head is if you didn't give your all, you're going to regret that later. So I just kind of knuckle down. I make sure that every day, every minute, every opportunity I have, I'm giving everything I can, no matter how tough it is, no matter how difficult it is, it's going to get better. It's the EKG of life, people. Thanks, CC. Great question. Medela.photo, best lens for portrait, ? The Q 28mm is just a test, ? So the Q, I mean, you must have seen my video on portraits with the Q2, and you kind of heard the story of why I got rid of all my other cameras. It's the only digital camera I have. Photography-wise, I am mostly a portrait photographer. So I wouldn't say the 28mm is a test, but I'm trying to relearn. I'm trying to limit myself. I'm trying to challenge myself so that I can see the world differently. And I'm going to actually have a summation video about that coming out pretty soon. But best lens for portraits? It just depends on how you want to do it, right? How do you want to see the world? A lot of people do 24mm portraits, and they do great portraits, wide angles. Some people like, a 105. Some people like a 200mm. I'm most comfortable, and I like the aesthetic of a 50 or an 85, fast, a 1.4. I like that compressed image. I like that shallow depth of field. This lens that I'm filming on right now is a Sigma 85mm 1.4 on my wife's A7 III. Thanks, honey, for letting me use your camera. And I got it wide open, trying to get a good portrait shot here for this video. So I don't know, it's impossible to say what's best. It's really, what do you like? What aesthetic works for you? What is your look? What do you want to do? You want to do wide? You want to do compressed? You want to do real tight shot? It's all good, man. It's all good. You do you. How difficult is it to make the switch from digital to analog? Well, you don't have to switch. You can do both. I do both. And, my favorite camera is my M6, my film camera. My favorite digital camera is my Q2. So if you're not shooting film and you're serious about photography, I think you ought to give it a crack. I mean, I have a ton of fun shooting film. I love it. It's what I dream about the most. When I think about the future and the photography projects that I want to do or that I'm planning on doing, they almost all involve film. I'm really dreaming of getting into medium format, and I think that's going to come within a year, I hope. I'm just researching and trying to figure out what camera I want to go with. Maybe I want to try a couple of different ones out. But, you don't have to limit yourself. It's not binary. You can do both. You can keep the digital camera, get a cheap film camera, get a point and shoot, get an inexpensive SLR. You can do it. Do both. Photography is fun. Film is a lot of fun. You're going to slow down. You're going to learn. You're going to express yourself in a different way. You're going to grow as an artist. Go shoot some film, folks. From All the Adventures. Okay, All the Adventures. So this is an account that says it's for the Galowskis. Now, the Galowskis have been big supporters of the YouTube channel and promoting it on Instagram and such, so appreciate you guys. And they have asked a question here. How do you stay unbiased in managing the subjects in challenging environments? And now, I didn't understand this question, so I reached out to the Galowskis, All the Adventures, and I asked them to clarify that, and here's what they said. I said, please, can you clarify? And the response, so I was thinking about Mike Thurk talking about the impact the riots had on him. One could say he was kind of swept away in the moment. Do you keep yourself in check when you are photographing something, someone, or some event, or as an artist, you don't feel that pull need like, say, a journalist? Man, I hope this makes sense. I think I know what you're trying to say here, Galowskis. So I'm going to riff on this a little bit. I'm going to rant a little bit. I'm going to try and keep this brief so we don't have a 3-hour video here. But not being affected by the situation that's happening, by the person, by an event. How do you stay centered? What do you do? I think that's kind of what you're looking for. You're looking for clarity in that area. And I can talk about that. Because I've got a fair amount of experience. I don't know about, you referenced Mike Thurk. Mike's a friend of mine, by the way, folks. And he's been on some of my videos. So if you scroll down towards the bottom, there's a couple of videos that Mike Thurk's in, the Death Valley video, and then there's a little conversation with him. Mike's a great photographer. I don't know anything about him shooting riots or anything. I haven't talked to him about that. So I do have a lot of friends that I've seen on the internet of, been in some big cities, and they've had went out and photographed demonstrations and riots and social unrest, and there's been a fair amount of that this year. I've avoided all of it purposefully and with not an ounce of regret. So I live just outside of Los Angeles. There was a lot of stuff going on in downtown LA and in Hollywood, and I watched it on the internet. I didn't have any desire to drive in there and wade into it and get involved. And I think it's awesome when people go out and peacefully protest and practice our democracy in this great country that we have, and how we're free to do that. You can march down the street with a sign, you can stand on the corner, you can tell everybody what you think is messed up, how it should be better. That's great. You can't do that in a lot of countries, and that's what makes our country great. Do I want to go out there and photograph that and get involved? Do I feel a responsibility to do that? No. We did have a lot of rough stuff happening, people rioting, people breaking and entering, destroying property, that kind of stuff, acting violently towards other people. All kinds of nasty stuff going on that we all know about. I'm not going to unpack it here. I don't know the how and the why. That's not my place. But I'm gonna give you a couple tips about this. And now I am primarily a filmmaker more than a photographer. So only about, like 90% of my money comes from filmmaking, documentaries, and television and that kind of thing. Only about 10% of what I do is actually paid photography. So I really enjoy it. I've always wanted to be a photojournalist. It's tough to make a living at that, but I would, if someone wanted to pay me to go shoot some stuff, I would love to do that. Honestly, I'm not trying to get a job here. I'm just saying that that's always been something that I would really dig doing. But the first paid camera job I ever had running like a video camera, I started in somewhere in East LA, or maybe it was like Compton or Inglewood. It was some really underprivileged neighborhood, and I was with a task force. I was going out with a task force at 4 a.m. While they were doing probation raids on recently released from prison gang members. So these are all felons. They're violent felons. So they've been convicted, served their time, and then released back into society. They're felons for life. They've done violent crimes or bad drug crimes or whatever. And this is a task force of probation officers, LAPD SWAT, and some vice cops who are off duty just making overtime. And they would go out and they'd knock on the doors of these folks that had just gotten out of prison. And if they had any guns, any drugs, were doing anything bad, they'd hook them up and take them back to jail. So that's the situation if you're a felon, right? And you've committed a crime. That's what your reality's like. So, it's an operation, man. We showed up at this briefing room. They had satellite pictures on the wall of every house we were going to visit. Okay, we're going to enter this way. It's a tactical operation. It's with a tactical team. Everybody's wearing jeans, black t-shirts, Kevlar vest, no helmets, but they all had submachine guns, maybe a shotgun. I didn't have a Kevlar vest at all. I had a little camera, a little video camera. And I'm following them around. Nobody's telling me what to do. They're just like, Ben, go film this. And that's what I did for a couple days. And, they said it's real common to have a violent interaction with some of these people. About half the people end up going back to jail because about half of them have drugs or guns or they're doing bad stuff. I did see them hook up a couple people and take them back to jail. There was thankfully no violence occurred. But since then, in the last almost 2 decades, I've worked a ton with different branches of law enforcement, state, federal, county, some federal law enforcement on a few occasions, fish and game. Worked with a lot of first responders, firemen. Worked with a Coast Guard rescue team for a season in a helicopter. That was freaking awesome. So I've worked with different first responders and law enforcement and the military a lot over my career, probably more than anything else. And a lot of these situations I've gone into potentially really dangerous, violent situations, potential gunplay. I've seen some horrible accidents. I've seen some horrible things happen that, frankly, you don't ever want to see. Worse than anything I've ever seen in a movie. So I've seen horrible violence. I've watched people die right in front of me. So I do approach situations like these large protests or these violent outbreaks. I tend to look at that a little differently than just the average public. I think I must. Just having the experience of being around some pretty intense violence, some very scary situations. So I had no intention of going near any of the rioting, any of the protests, any of the violence that was happening. So I do want to say this, it's a whole long intro. I want to keep this as short as possible. But I do want to give all of you out there who are artists, photographers, filmmakers, thinking about going and filming something like this, thinking about taking pictures, here's a couple things that you need to think about. And maybe you already are, but this is how I approach it. And this is how I approach almost every creative situation I get into. It just applies over, and it's a little more important when you're talking about something like going into a crowded mass of people where violence is something that could potentially happen, and maybe happen around you, happen to you. 3 things. The first thing is you need to have something called situational awareness, right? You cannot get caught up in, where's my camera? You don't want to be here. When you're looking through your camera, man, this is your viewpoint. Meanwhile, you've got 300 degrees around you where you're not looking at. If you're looking in your video camera, you're looking in your still camera. So you've got to have your head on a swivel, and you've got to have situational awareness at all times, no matter what you're doing. Actually, that's why a lot of journalists, photojournalists, use these rangefinders, these Leicas, because you're not actually looking through the lens. You can zone focus. You can set it to, okay, I want everything at 10 to 40 feet is in focus. That's how a lot of photojournalists will shoot. And so you don't have to necessarily be here. You can kind of point it in the direction, and you just know everything out there in a certain range is in focus. That's pretty cool. That's why a lot of journalists use these cameras. But just in general, I work now operating a video camera in some pretty stressful, occasionally violent situations, dangerous environments, machinery, people, all kinds of things. And this is pretty routine for me. So a video camera is more dangerous even than a still camera, because you got to, it's like a moving thing. You're always looking. So it's having that situational awareness where you're paying attention to everything around you. Here's the thing. As photographers, as filmmakers, what are we? We're observers. We're observing the human condition. We're observing patterns. We're observing human behavior, right? That's how we do what we do. That's what we're trying to capture. So just naturally, you're paying attention to this stuff anyways, right? So situational awareness is key. And then, now if I'm going into a situation for work or something I just want to capture, I am having like a little mini kind of brief in my head as I'm going into it. I'm stating a couple things. Okay, what's my intent here? And beyond that, what's my priority? So your intent, why this is important, is what do I intend to get out of this? Well, okay, there's a peaceful demonstration. I intend to get some nice close-up shots of people practicing their rights in our democratic society, right? You want those dramatic, like compressed shots of people, yeah, whatever it is that they're demonstrating about. Maybe that's what you want. That's what you intend. Okay, what's your priority? Getting things in focus? No, 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 no. That's a given. What's your priority? I don't know. I'll tell you what my priority is every time I go out. My priority is my safety, that I stay alive, that I stay healthy, and that I'm able to go back home. That's my priority. So that's the thing that's the lens that you need to put everything through. You need to be constantly asking yourself these questions. Okay, what's my intent here, and what's my priority in this situation? The situation might be fluid and it might change and it might grow violent. Your priority might be, okay, I need to extract myself now. And how do you make that judgment call? Okay, well, you have situational awareness. You're paying attention to everything around you so that you know when maybe your priority is going to shift. Instead of now capturing things, now I just need to get the heck out of here, right? Other simple things, if I was going to go into downtown and film even a peaceful protest, I'm not going to drive down there and park in some big parking garage. I'll tell you that right now. I'm going to drive down. I'm going to get into the closest residential neighborhood and I'm going to park on the street somewhere. And then if I got to walk a mile, I'm going to do that. I'm just going to show up early and I'm going to walk into it. And that way, when things go south, when the cop cars come in, when the first responders come in, when people are running through the streets and traffic's all jammed up, I can walk my ass out of there and drive home, no problem. So I'm not a paranoid person and I don't walk around, looking over my shoulder and things, but I am a keen observer. And because that's my job. That's my job as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, as a photographer. I am observing all the time, and you can't only do it through this little hole, through your viewfinder. I hope this answers your questions, Galowskis. I kind of went off a little bit. Don't want to make this too long, but if any of you want any clarity on this, you want to hear some specific examples, or you want to talk more about it, drop me a comment or reach out, whatever. I can talk about this for a long time, and I've got a lot of experience, and maybe we'll do that more in the future. But I hope that answers that simple question. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. Great question. All the adventures. Thank you, Ben Gronhout. Ben is a supporter too. Thank you, buddy. He says, what's an adventure you're glad to have done but wouldn't repeat? Lots of them. The best adventures, the best stories are like the ones where, whoa, we got through that. Man, there is no way I'm going to be able to give you a specific example in this short amount of time. I've got so many. I will say this, yeah, the best stuff, the funnest stories you like to tell later, they're just the ones you kind of escaped, right? You got by with the skin of your teeth. That's what makes a good adventure. That's what makes a good story. And, you don't want to go back and do that because you've already done it. Lots of adventures, lots of climbing stories in Alaska, lots of, I think about this cave I went in Arizona with my brother David that became this kind of epic thing. Lots of things I don't want to repeat, but I'm glad I did. Anders Holt Samuelson. Photoshop, mischief or tool? Well, that's just a tool, man, but you can definitely use it for mischief. You can use almost anything for mischief. Any tool, right? It's just how you use it. Photoshop is key. Now, I don't use it every day. I mostly use Lightroom to edit my photos and stuff, but I probably use Photoshop weekly. Great tool. Don't overdo it, folks. Don't overdo it. It's just a tool. Shot by Steves. Will you be open to doing one-on-one or group workshops? Yes. I actually had a group workshop scheduled for the spring, and then the COVID situation happened. I hadn't even announced it yet, but it was my sister-in-law is a really great photographer and has a studio in Portland, and she had wanted me to come up and do a portrait workshop at her studio. And we had been actually kicking this back and forth for about a year. It was going to be in May or something, and then the COVID thing happened. So right before I was going to announce it and we're going to talk about it publicly, we just decided, this isn't happening. So it's TBD now. It's going to happen probably not this year, looking at what I got going for the rest of the year, but probably not this year, but probably, hopefully, if things cool down early next year, I'm going to be up in Portland doing a one-day comprehensive portrait workshop. So Stay tuned if that interests you. As far as a one-on-one workshop, I haven't really put a lot of thought into that. I'm open to it, but I'd have to figure out kind of a format or a way or how we could do that, a kind of a mode of doing it where it'd be a good value to people. It's important to me to do things that are a good value to people. So, and after I do this Portland workshop, if it goes well, and if the format that I have in mind and that I've kind of planned out works well, I probably will definitely do more. Okay, next, Gus Romes. What keeps you going when you don't want to take photographs? Gus, I always want to take photographs. Sometimes what I don't want to do is get up early in the morning. Like if I want to go shoot sunrise, and the night before I'm like, yeah, we're gonna do it, and then the alarm goes off, or I wake up before the alarm and it's like 4 a.m. and I'm just like, oh, dude, I just want to stay in bed. What keeps me going, what gets me out of bed is I know that like if I don't get my ass out of bed, I'm gonna feel like a total piece of crap later. So I know what that feels like when you've sort of wussed out and you haven't gone and done the thing that you had planned on doing. I hate that feeling, and I will not allow myself to feel that way. So I'm always going to get up and go. And I just had that in mind because there is a video coming out soon where I go out at 4 a.m. and shoot a sunrise. Good stuff, good stuff. Okay, Aaron Vlan, what's the hardest lesson you learned from working behind the camera? I'm a slow learner, and I pretty much only learn the hard way, and it usually takes me 2 or 3 times. I'm a little bit slow. One lesson that it took me a while to learn, and I every time I forget it, and every time that I don't follow this lesson, I pay for it, and that is trust your instincts. Your instinct is a muscle. Use it. It gets stronger. It pays you dividends. And every time I've kind of gone into something or done something and not trusted myself, I've regretted it. I've come up short from what I intended. So trust your instincts, folks. That's what you have. That's you. That's your instincts. That's your vision, your essence, your oomph. So your instincts, trust them. That's where the good shit comes from. I don't know if I articulated that super well. From Sweet Claw, what's the most haunted place you've ever stayed? Whoa, good question. I don't know. I've never seen a ghost. I've been creeped out a couple times. Okay, here's one. I've done over the years a whole bunch of this TV show called Deadliest Catch on Discovery Channel. Filmed a whole bunch of that. And one of the last, I haven't done it in a couple years now, but one of the last seasons I worked on, I was on this boat called the Saga. And the captain's Jake Anderson. I've known Jake since well before he was a captain. I've known him for 10 years now. And I was out there for Opies, which is in the winter. And it was a super long, really tough Opie season. In the middle of the season, the weather got super gnarly and we had to go run and hide behind St. Paul Island, basically in the lee of the island. It's protected from the direction the weather was coming, so you just anchor up in the lee of the island, and we waited there for 4 or 5 days, maybe a week, I don't know. And we're just hanging out and there's not a lot to do. I learned from the crew. We started talking to some of the crew members, and now crab boats are pretty creepy places. They're kind of like floating haunted houses. They're all pretty old. They're rusty and creaky, and there's dripping water and chains, and they're creepy places. It's, just hanging out, talking to a bunch of the crew, we learned that to a man, all the crew believed that this particular boat was haunted. Now, apparently, back, 20 or 30 years earlier, a crew member had been killed on the boat. They didn't know the specifics, but they knew that someone had died on the boat. And several of them had actually seen his ghost. They believed it was his ghost. Now, one story from one guy, this is the story that creeped me out, is this one crew member had gone up to the forepeak. Now, the forepeak's up in the bow. It's a room in the bow, and it's 2 layers. So you can go in the forepeak, and then there's stairs going down. And they store like extra food and equipment and stuff down there. So he had went down there alone into the lower forepeak, and he's down there getting something, and all of a sudden the lights went out. This is not uncommon on a crab boat. You know, they've got a generator. Sometimes a generator will die, you lose power, whatever. But all the lights went out, and then boom, they came back on, and there was a dude standing right in front of him, looking at him, a guy in rain gear, and then the guy just disappeared. Whew, that would freak me out. Someone else claimed, I think, that they had seen someone down in the engine room. They all would tell stories of hearing footsteps in the hallway at night when they knew there was nobody moving around. Everybody's sleeping. There shouldn't be anybody walking around, and they would just hear footsteps walking through the halls. Super creepy. Now, crab boats are pretty small, and there's not a lot of room for the film crew a lot of times, and that was the case in this boat. I had to sleep under the wheelhouse. So you go up in the wheelhouse, and then there's a hatch that opens in the floor, and you climb down under there, and there's like a 3-foot crawl space, a bunch of food down there, and storage of other things. But I had a mattress down there, and a small piece of foam, and a sleeping bag, and that was my bunk. So after I heard all these stories about this ghost, and then I'd have to climb down there, and there's wooden rafters, I'm under the floor. It's creepy and creaky anyways, and then you got to turn out the lights down there and just sit there in the dark. And I thought about all those stories, and the boat's going like this, and you hear waves crashing against the side and water lapping. It's pretty creepy. I never saw anything though. All right, good question. All right, we're almost done here. Last one from Instagram from _Chapman_. Mr. Chapman, influence is not necessarily photography and how they've inspired you. Yeah, most of my influences creatively don't come from photography, I don't think. Mostly it's music, painting, and cinema. I'm a big photography fan, obviously, and there's some people I really admire and I like their work and I love to look at it. I don't know, I try not to let it influence me so much. I do look at for influence or inspiration. If I want to be inspired, what I'll do is I look at certain painters, or I'll watch a film, or I'll just put on certain music, you know. And I did have a post on Instagram the other day, a story post where I threw up a bunch of my influences. One of them being this painter Ashley Wood, another painter John Foster. They do kind of almost science fiction genre type stuff, real muted tones and characters, and just really awesome compositions and poses and cool shit, man. You should check it out. I like cinema, of course. Films give me a lot of inspiration, and then music, all kinds of music. I've super wide tastes. Anything from, just say, the band Tool really inspired me for years. Just really dense, dynamic, cinematic music, to anything from something that's really inspired me since I was little, actually, is this album, The Red-Headed Stranger by Willie Nelson, which tells this dark, violent story of revenge. Very cinematic, very dark, just paints pictures in your mind, inspires me. Good question. Okay, we're almost done here. Let's go to, I have a little artist Facebook page that I sometimes don't go to for months, but there are some people who are loyal there and always show up there, and so I put up a post and asked people to ask any questions. So we got a couple. We got the first one is from Joe Collinson. Thanks for all the support over the years, Joe. I really appreciate you. Do you take your camera everywhere just in case, or do you plan your shoots? I take my camera most places. You know, where I don't usually take it is if I run down to the grocery store, or if I'm going to the gas station or the post office or something like that. I sometimes usually don't bring it. If I'm going into the big city like LA or Hollywood, or I'm going on a hike or something, always have a camera. Just bring it. Just in case. I don't want to not have it. If I'm going for a walk around the neighborhood, generally bring my camera. A lot of times I go for super early morning walks just to clear my head, and always bring the camera. Oftentimes don't even shoot anything, but it's with me. From Morgan M. Morgan. Morgan's a blues musician that I've known for over 20 years. Used to work the door at this blues club in Anchorage, Alaska. I was Ben the Friendly Doorman. And Morgan was one of the main players there. He was up there. There was live blues 7 nights a week, and most nights Morgan was there, pumping out some blues and soul and feeling it. Thanks for the question, Morgan. Which do you prefer, Ben, black and white or color? For some reason, it always seems to me that black and white creates a sharper image. Yeah, man, I agree with that. You know, it's color. Color affects you emotionally in a certain way. You see colors. You see a red image, and it just makes you feel a certain way. You see a blue image, it makes you feel a certain way. Black and white, you know, you're gonna bounce off that image differently. You know, I like my black and white portraits. You know, I like to look into someone's eyes and not be biased or emotionally influenced by any kind of color. I want to see their expression. I want to see the light. I want to see their the composition and just see into their soul, if you will, a little deeper. I guess if I had to pick black and white or color, of course I'd pick black and white. Maybe 15 or 20% of my images end up color, but if you look at my Instagram or something, it's mostly black and white. Sue Mottram. Sue has been a fan and supporter for a long time, so I appreciate you, Sue. She's bought some prints before, and she just bought a copy of this little short-run book that I had. Hopefully, by the time this goes up, she has gotten that book. I really appreciate all your support, Sue. She asks, is there any place you'd like to go again or haven't been yet, and why? Yes. I think my favorite place I've ever been is Italy, specifically northern Italy, specifically the Dolomites, the Italian Alps. I'd go back there tomorrow. I'd go back there and stay for a year tomorrow. Just loved it. Loved the landscape, loved the mountains, loved the people, loved these little communities, loved that Italian country way of life. I think we're definitely planning on going back there. Love to see the French Alps, love to see the Swiss Alps, love to see the Austrian Alps, which is right over the border there. Might actually in the next 3 or 4 years do a extended Alps trip. You know, maybe a lot of hut-to-hut hiking and that kind of thing, and a lot of photography, a lot of just exploring, a lot of adventuring. Where haven't I been? Where do I want to go? I think probably next, I really want to go to Japan. So I think we're planning on maybe a extended Japan trip, maybe a couple months even. Whenever it seems like safe and travel is going to happen again. Beyond that, I would like to go to deeper into South America, down in Chile or Argentina. Been to Peru a couple times and loved it, but I really want to get down there deeper into the south in South America, which is actually like the north up here, but I want to get down to that more rural country, big wide open country, a lot of mountains, a lot of wilderness. I want to kick around down there for a while and explore and have some adventures. So that's it, folks. Really appreciate all the questions. Really appreciate you showing up. Really appreciate the support, sincerely. If there's anything I said that you want to talk about more, you want to know more about, or you want to discuss, leave me a comment. I love the discussion. I love the discourse. I love having a conversation about these things. And I feel like I kind of rushed through this, but a lot of this stuff I could probably extrapolate on quite a bit. So if you got any questions, let's talk about it. The other thing is, you might have noticed watching this, there was some ads. Well, that happened. Got this little notification saying you're eligible for ads. So I turned it on. So sorry. Hopefully maybe I can subsidize my film habit a little bit. I mean, that would be cool. I don't know how this is all gonna work out or what it all means, but I did it, and so sorry we're not ad free anymore. I hope you stick around. There's some pretty cool stuff coming in the pipeline. I feel like I say this a lot too, but I got 2 videos that are basically almost done, and several more in the works. So there's some cool stuff coming. If there's anything you want me to talk about or you want to hear more about or anything, please leave that in the comments. Like I'm open to suggestions. I am making this up as I go along. So thanks for tuning in. Be safe out there, folks. We'll see you on the next one.